a team that isn't in the title race, a team who won't win the league this year, most of us believe at this point, is Manchester City. They do look finished this season by every single metric, every single performance and eye test. There's a stat going around, Nobbins, which we can see here. Since the 1st of November, City have averaged 0.57 points per game, which is the fewest, alongside Southampton, who have just sacked their manager. Leicester, they're on 0.71, and then Villa actually doing pretty poorly themselves. Everton and Wolves on 1 point each. It's the worst run of form, one of the worst runs of form in City's Premier League history. Pep's never been at this stage before. Yesterday, though, beaten by Man United after leading until the 88th minute. They say I know it rains a lot in Manchester, but it seems to be pouring right now.
And the rain is shit as well. It's raining and it's raining shit, sadly, all over my fevered brow. It's not good, is it? It's not. Yeah, it's not good. I don't know what I can say that hasn't already been said, like on these shows. I feel like I've been saying it for like a couple months now, that the issues at City are multifaceted and varied, and there are many of them, and there is no in-house solution, clearly. And essentially, from a league perspective, this season is done. It has been done for a while. This was sort of like a further nail in the proverbial coffin. And from my perspective, again, there's a potential, if we get an easy FA Cup run. I mean, we play the mighty Salford next year, and they actually might beat us the way we're going. But if we get a relatively favourable FA Cup run, maybe we can do something there. If we get a favourable, Champions League run and sign someone in Jan, maybe some sort of salvation can be achieved there. But yeah, from a league perspective, it's done. I just want us to sign a couple players in Jan who we were going to sign anyway, and integrate them into the team now, so that they've got January to May to get up to speed, rather than you sign them in August and they've got to hit the ground running immediately for next season, because it's pretty clear a big rebuild is needed. Our owners have, or rather, our sporting director actually said, probably should have done this a year earlier. That's lovely in hindsight, but that's happened, and that's clear to see for everyone. It's almost like a domino effect this season of one bad thing happens, then another, then another, then another. And as I say, there are many issues this season. I feel like it started physically, from a physical perspective, and then there were some tactical question marks. But in terms of like the capitulation yesterday, the mental frailty was on display. I think that it's impacted a lot of these. I think it's impacted every player, to be honest, even like, players who associated being at our leaders. Ruben Diaz, for example. I think that lots of these players, I think basically probably every single one of these players has never been in a period like this before, from like a losing games perspective. So I think this is all just like caught up, to be honest. And I say it's like a big domino effect that's led to this point. And every single week I say, oh, don't worry, guys, can't get worse than this. And then there's always a further new low. So I'm looking forward to seeing how much further we can descend into the cesspit against Aston Villa. Pardon?
How many players do you think you need, Nobbins? Like you said, 2 in January. I think you need 6 or 7 players.
Well, realistically, if you look at like the City, I think you're right, Herman. The way, if you look at the City squads, I'm gonna name some players which realistically could/should leave in the summer, whether they're because of out of contract or because of injuries. Ederson and Ortega both might go, because Ederson wants to go to Saudi and Ortega doesn't want to be the number 2, and I don't think he's good enough to be the number 1. So we need 2 keepers. You can only keep one of Ake or Stones, so let's say Stones goes for argument's sake. Kyle Walker, obviously. Kevin De Bruyne, out of contract. Maybe Jack Grealish. Maybe Bernardo Silva. Maybe Mateus Nunes. Gundogan. Kovacic. I've actually got to double digits there. I didn't even think I could get to 10. So there is a question mark, can't speak, alongside 10 players, I'd say. So they won't all leave, because this isn't FIFA, this isn't Football Manager. But yeah, you are looking at sort of like around 5-ish proper players to come in. This is why we need to hit the market in Jan. And obviously we need to hit it in the summer. That the squad's been neglected from that perspective for a while, and we are suffering the consequences. We got away with it last season.
Can I ask you a question when you say neglected? Sorry, I will jump on that point. I heard Gary Neville yesterday sort of really defend City and say that nobody should be questioning them because of what they've won. No one should question the players. No one should question the manager. Nobody should question the club because of what they've achieved. I thought that was a little bit condescending. The more I've listened to it and read it, I read it and then I listened to it. I read the quotes first and I listened to him say it. I thought that was a little bit condescending to Manchester City fans. I agree with him that as bad as this run is, it doesn't undo anything you've achieved. Completely concur. I know you didn't buy a lot this summer just gone. Gundogan on a free and Savio. But it's not as though hundreds of millions of pounds in the last 3 to 4 seasons haven't been spent on midfielders, wide players and attackers to replace or to create backups for the likes of Rodri and to replace the likes of Raheem Sterling's goals and Riyad Mahrez. So I wanted to ask you, I know some players are timing out, age is catching up with them. There's a bit of a bloatedness. But would you also say some of this is down to Man City as a collective, as a club, for multiple seasons of poor recruitment?
It's only down to City, absolutely. Yeah, there's no higher power to blame. It's City's fault that we're in this situation. And as I say, I think that in fairness, like the higher ups have come out and said this. Like I think like even Pep's like hinted that, maybe I was like wrong about like, wanting a small squad. That's all well and good. And it has worked in fairness, but then it leads to this situation where one player gets injured and then another, and then another, and then it leads to just like poor squad building generally. And then the mentality issue that we discussed. So yeah, it's whoever is in charge of the squad building, whether it's Pep, whether it's the sporting director, whether it's someone else. Yeah, of course, like they've got to bear a lot of the burden, the responsibility. We know that in this industry, if you stand still, you're actually moving backwards. And that's what happened after the treble winning year, Again, they came out and said that probably would have been a great opportunity to move on some players. Gundogan, we did move on, but we never replaced him. We've replaced Gundogan of the treble winning year with a Gundogan who's 2 years older and can't run anymore. So we still haven't replaced him. And we didn't do enough this summer either. So yeah, it's only ourselves to blame.
So
I hear that. I want to ask another question here, and maybe it feeds into it, and then you can come in. I get and respect all of that, and there are a lot of City fans that have called this out, and I just wanted to get your opinion on it, and I think there has to be balance on it. How much longer can this continue until Pep either becomes under pressure from the fans and the club, or maybe Pep says, I'm going to step away? Do you think that I've heard Stuart Pearce today talk about it. I've listened to a few City fans phone into sort of talk shows and say, his legacy's on the line. Some people talking about his health. He's openly said he's got stomach problems like IBS, can't eat anything other than soup. He isn't sleeping. We've seen him twice now. Yesterday included scratch chunks of his head out in frustration. That's not a great place. And I'm not even joking about it. That's not a great place for a human being to be in. Do you think if he can't get you back to being competitive, he could cut short this contract extension? Maybe he just says, actually, I've had enough. Or is that not something you fear as a City fan?
In terms of this season, I think this season, as I say, from a league perspective, is essentially a write-off. So I don't think it really matters to me, because realistically, he's not going to end like, I know we're bad, but we're not going to get relegated unless there are charges in before that happens. From a footballing perspective, we're not bad enough to, finish, like 15th below, etc. I know we're bad, but we're not that bad. So this season's basically a write-off from a league perspective. So my question would be the following season, assuming that he is backed and assuming that he wants to be backed, then I think it's fair to cast judgment. I feel like you build up a lot of credit in the bank winning 6 out of 7 titles. I think that's reasonable to go, you're allowed an off season, and again, I don't know, because I'm not behind the scenes. I don't know if it is Pep's fault that we are in the situation from a squad building perspective, because allegedly Pep said he was happy with the squad. If that is the case, then this is on Pep, to be honest with you. I don't know whether that's true. That's just what the journalists have said. So we will see what happens in Jan. We'll see what happens in the summer.
So actually, can I just ask numbers? I think, is it time for us to have an uncomfortable Pep Guardiola discussion? Because you've talked about how it's about Man City and it's about the group and everything. Because this is my view. Maybe you might agree or disagree. Pep Guardiola is an amazing coach, one of the best coaches out there. But I believe that he's a garbage manager, that he's trash as a manager. And my explanation is that management is about managing situations, managing scenarios. Pep Guardiola walked into a Barca team with one of the greatest international teams ever in that Spanish core, and with Messi, one of the greatest players we've ever seen. Bayern Munich, he took over a team that was a treble-winning team by Jupp Heynckes. He walked into Man City. They'd already reached the UCL semis and already had won the league twice. All this time, he's always had ideal scenarios. This is the first time he has a crisis. And what does he do? He scratches himself. He says that his parents could have gave him away if he was bad. And he starts saying some weird stuff at press conferences. So you can tell that he's not used to this. Shouldn't we judge a manager by how well you manage scenarios and crisis? And also, just to add on to that, the whole Rodri thing. I think because he keeps on saying, if I had Rodri, the Ballon d'Or player. Pep, don't treat us like we were stupid. So you're saying that because you don't have a DM, you can only win twice in 10, 11 games?
Once.
Isn't this more so about a guy who is so...
Once.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow,
get it
sorry.
right.
Well, yeah, once in 12 games. So isn't this about, because again, it goes back to the whole Pep Fergie, and people, before the scenario, guys were like, well, Fergie looks a bit iffy. But when you look at what Fergie had to build from Man United, what he did at Aberdeen, and the kind of players he had to work with, having to win with guys like freaking Kanchelskis and Poborski and guys like those guys, shouldn't we hold Pep Guardiola's feet more to the fire with the fact of you don't have an ideal scenario, you don't have your DM, yet you're still obsessed with this plan A, and the team tactically is being destroyed? Can't you just say that as a manager, maybe he's fraudulent?
Gosh, there's a lot to... Sorry, Nina.
I just wanted to say to that, and not to defend Man City or anything, but I agree with Have Hope about this is where, because everyone is looking at Pep thinking, Pep can turn this around, right? Pep can always find a way. Pep always comes up with something. And I think that's what everyone's waiting for. But as Nobbins mentioned earlier, I think, when he talks about the in-house and in terms of the squad and the players, a lot of these players look depleted and are sort of on a decline. A lot of them look like they are past their best in terms of performing for City, and they look like they can't know more. So I think the biggest question is there is long overdue refreshment, right? There needs to be refreshment. And I think then you can see what Pep can do, right? I think that's where Pep can maybe find something, pull something out of the bag like everyone's waiting for. But with this squad, you currently look at it and you think, what can change or who can improve? And I think that's the biggest thing. Who can improve? Because the players that you're looking at, the ones that have contributed to winning these titles and winning the treble, etc., you look and you think, well, I don't think they can sort of step up on that, right? I think it looks like they've kind of hit that past, and where Nobbin says that a lot of those players might leave, well, yeah, they definitely do need to be replaced. So if and whoever they buy in January, and I think even then you're not going to be spoiled for who you can get, because the best out there won't be available, and if they are, they're going to make sure they sponge the most out of you, because nobody wants to let go of their best players mid-season, right? So even then it will be tough, but you will still have somebody come in, and I think that's when you look at, okay, what can Pep do with that somebody or those somebodies in order to turn things for Man City? And then that's maybe where those dejected players can step up a little bit. But yeah, right now you're looking in-house and you think, well, what can improve? Nothing really. And I think we're seeing that now because it's becoming a bit more consistent where City are playing the way they are and nothing's improving. You can't bring on really a wonder kid and somebody that can freshen things up, and that's just missing. So for me, you have to look externally. You have to have something come in order for Pep to actually have a chance to transform this, because if he's looking and betting on these players he currently has, which have been absolutely fantastic, it might not happen.
Yes, I agree with everything that Nia's just said there. Yes, 100%. Have Hope, you asked like 5 or 6 different questions there, so I'll try to address them all, but I will miss some, so apologies. I try to follow the timeline. I think you said that Pep on Barca, just quickly on that, he joined Barca when they finished third, 18 points off top spot, and then his first season won the treble, so we're not going to rewrite history there.
With Messi in the Spanish club, but please continue.
A Messi Spanish core, which finished 18 points off first place,
but he still had Messi,
and he got rid of Ronaldinho and
Zambrotta, so clearly not walking into the best team in the world, clearly, because otherwise he would have won the league the last two seasons and not finished 18 points off first. So that's the first thing to say there. I can't remember what you said. Then he talked about Bayern. Yeah, I mean, in fairness, in respect to Bayern, he won it for he put Bayern in a position where they won the Bundesliga 4 times in a row for the first time in their history. He broke records in his first season as well.
Did he reach the UCL final with that team?
Pardon?
Did he reach the UCL final with that Bayern team?
No, he reached the semi-final 3 times. No other club in that period did that. In fairness, and in terms of City, again, I've forgotten what he said. He said quite a lot.
No, I'm just my whole point. Just to summarize, my whole point is he's never been in a scenario where there's been a crisis.
No, sorry, and he said. And they have Fergie, didn't you? Again, I don't want to brag on Fergie, he's a wonderful manager, but Fergie did in the late 80s with the most expensively assembled squad in the world, finishing 13th and 11th. So again, we're not going to rewrite history there and act that that Fergie was never in a situation like that either. In terms of like going back to Pep in isolation, just building on what Nina said just then, the point is I don't think there is a manager who would do better, quite frankly. I think the fundamental issue isn't really, I think there have been some tactical issues this season, but unless you can tell me what you think the tactical issues are, I think that mainly this is a squad building issue, and this is also just a fundamental qualitative issue. I don't think